outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, CEO of the Crone Law Firm. And with me today, I'm very excited to have my once and maybe future law partner, you never know, Jeff McEvoy, who's the owner of Home Surety, a title company here in town. And he and his wife, Emily, run that company and have built a great not just a great title company, but a great company that serves realtors and folks buying and selling real estate. And not only that, he's a good guy. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, one thing I know about you, Jeff, that may be a little controversial is you went to that big university in East Tennessee, didn't you?
University of Tennessee, go Vols, baby.
So tell us a little bit about, now I know that you've got some affinity to Chicago, and you made your way to Memphis kind of in grade school. Tell us how the adjustment from Chicago to Memphis was for you.
Wow, long time ago. I was 12 years old, and I grew up watching Ernie Banks and Ron Santo and the Cubs, and one of my first great experiences as a child is remembering walking into Wrigley Field and seeing that ivy, and it was just the most amazing thing in the world. So when I was 12 years old, my father, who was at the time, wanted to make a change in his life and wanted to get into get opportunities and to become to help his family, and the opportunity was one of to move down to Memphis. He had gotten a sales position to better himself and his life and his family. And so back in those days, in the 70s, of course, it was the opposite of the Beverly Hillbillies. We loaded up the truck and moved to Tennessee. So,
from the big city.
That's exactly it. And of course, being a proverbial Yankee in the 70s was quite interesting coming in here. And so it was a different deal, but it would, and of course, moving into something different for a 12-year-old was, always different, but it was the best move that ever my life could have happened to me. I mean, it was amazing. And it was home at that, became home, and I just fell in love with Tennessee and Memphis and the South.
What was your earliest memory of Memphis where you knew, hey, this is a different gig?
I guess it probably was probably immediately, being a Catholic guy, and that's all we knew in Chicago was there was nothing but a bunch of Catholics that I was growing up with. So it became just different as to the culture, that regard. And the South, they also, in actuality, back in those days, there were still people that, grandparents, it wasn't too far, it was only 100 years past since the Civil War had happened. So there was always kind of a little bit of a difference between the North and South as to being an outsider. But, that easily went away. I mean, and became, just endearing to my heart. So that wasn't it was just part of the jeering, I think, of just being an outsider coming in. It was was nothing that ever deterred me from Memphis and it being my home and how much I love it here.
Sure. How did so you're 12 years old, is that 7th grade, 8th grade?
5th grade.
I'm sorry?
5th grade.
5th grade.
The end of 5th grade, yeah. And so we had, I moved here and immediately went to Germantown. And then the next fall, I started at Ridgeway. So went through that time period of and just adapting, to the environment and to the just the different. I mean, you're a different kid, a kid coming from, but everyone understands the universal language of sports, of baseball, of playing backyard, playing in the backyard, which probably now kids today are probably getting to experience things that we took for granted back in the day. We weren't as quite organized sports on everything. But it was more so about hanging out with the neighborhood kids and just playing in the backyard, which were amazing days and fun times.
Yeah, you and
So
I are about the same age. And I remember, if you drove through a residential neighborhood, at least in my experience, you would look out and you'd see at least one or two baseball games or football games going on in people's front yards. You just don't see that as much anymore.
in the Cove, yeah, it was definitely reminds you of watching a Lou Gehrig movie from the 1940s. Basically, people playing street ball, playing with a tennis ball and hitting a ball, and you know, just those were really really fun days of playing, as a kid, and playing until darkness, playing flashlight tag, all the rest of it, back in the days. A lot of good memories of riding your bike and playing in the neighborhood. So
And so you went to Christian Brothers High School.
the best place in the world. It was awesome. Love the brothers. They they taught me a lot of wonderful things, a lot of great discipline, and how to be a man, and how to be a student. The brothers were it was tough, fair, and immediate justice is what it was. When you got out of line, they immediately addressed it, and you basically didn't. There was no getting around it, but it was a great place, and I met many different people that to this day that I am still very very tight with. I probably talk to someone from Christian Brothers once a day, and not necessarily at the school, but someone that I've had a tie with today. Even being able to go, I went to school with them, or opportunity of being in front of those folks, and it was just absolutely marvelous place. I couldn't find anything that I would that's been a better experience school wise. It was just amazing.
I guess Memphis is not unlike a lot of places, but you really find in Memphis that people have strong ties to their high school, whether it's the folks that went to Melrose or White Station or Ridgeway, or a place like CBHS or MUS. But in particular, the Christian brothers boys, as it were, whether they're 20 or 80, seem to have a bond that lasts a long time.
It's the best fraternity I've ever been a part of. It really is. That's kind of because there is a brotherhood that, and you pointed it out so well. A kid that could graduate this year or even goes there is going to have a tie with an 80-year-old guy that went there, or myself, even having a bond with those folks. And there's a stream of that that you went through that same educational process in the LaSallian way. That is just was a marvelous experience, and you're right, no matter what, because the question that everyone asks here, you go into different areas throughout the United States, and there's a key question that's asked. And in Memphis, the question is, where'd you go to school? Well, everyone in Memphis always, that is, where did you go to high school? And it's not in any other way other than just a way of kind of, I don't care whether, like you said, Melrose and Hamilton, we played, ball against them, and they were, amazing. They had some of the best athletes and best people, that you went to went to college with, and I could be sitting in a business meeting today, and we could be talking about those playoff days from high school. It's just amazing as to the friends that you will have in common. That's the wonderful thing about Memphis. It is Mayberry. You're just basically everyone knows Aunt B and Juanita and Opie. So it's just that way. So
I think you're absolutely right. Looking back on those days, is there a figure that you look back on now and said, that person really made a big impact in my life?
Three in particular, Brother Adrian. And Brother Adrian, McEvoy, you're gonna, you need to, he was amazing. Brother Adrian was was superintendent, basically making sure that he was ahead of school discipline. So of course I got to know him very well because I was always having to be disciplined. And there was Mr. LaVecchia, an amazing English teacher that was small in stature but large in presence as to demanding respect, not through any way other than just basically being a gentleman and a scholar and teaching, that no matter how whatever, you just respected him because he just had that way about him. And there was a coach or Mr. Gossett, and he was just an amazing teacher that befriended and always we had a great bond with him because took you under toe, and there were just different ways about each professor and each teacher that they gave you things from religious, real life, scholastical. Everything was all about it. It was the full package. So those were the three that I really found to be just amazing people.
So how does a young guy from Chicago, transplanted to Memphis, end up at the University of Tennessee?
Wow, those days are different too. It's amazing. That's where all of my pals decided that's where they were going to go. So again, it's not quite like it was back where it is today. You're making school trips and such. No one, a lot of people, all your pals were just going over there or they're going over here. And it just became something that just seemed to be a great place to go. And it was a great place to go. And my cousin from Detroit actually and met me there too.
Wow.
And we were roommates. Cool. Yeah. So my cousin who I'd grown up with all my life just decided that that's where he was going to go too. And so we just again loaded up the truck and went to University of Tennessee. And my father was never into college sports or anything like that, and it just wasn't part of the North. That's not really it. But going to University of Tennessee, and seeing Willie Galt and the Minister of Defense Reggie White were some of the coolest experiences to see those guys play in a Saturday and during college years, and then being able to be to walk the hill and just have that whole new experience. It was definitely a different than being at the Brothers because it was you're a grown up again, but they had prepared us so well too to basically to handle it also without knowing it, being just a young punk of 18, 19-year-old kid, going to school. You're definitely still, you didn't know that you were being groomed for that type of life change and being able to be a grown up and handle the work environment. So it was great. And then going through through meeting different people throughout the state too. That was the other thing too. you really got to meet a lot of different people in all these different little places all over the state. And it's a big state. It's amazing to see back in those days, Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, and how everyone was kind of a little bit different, and that's the way our state has always been since its history too, is that we do things differently in all three of those different in East, Middle, and West. Whether whether it's legal or everything seems that they have just a little bit of different types of quirks, and and it was set up that way too, which is what I've learned since history, and so I find that to be really quite uh, thrilling and interesting. So that was a pretty cool deal too.
Yeah. A Tennessee history professor told me once that at one point the highway signs, when you would come into Tennessee, would say, "Welcome to the three states of Tennessee, East, Middle, and West."
That makes so much sense. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So and you're right. It is a big state. People forget that Chicago is closer than Johnson City to Memphis.
That's right.
And you stand up Tennessee, you go all the way to Canada. So it's a big state and it's a diverse state. But I'm like you. It's a great state. I love living in Tennessee.
Oh man, it's awesome. I'm so proud of the state of Tennessee. It's ridiculous.
So going into your university or your college years, did you know you wanted to be a lawyer, or did that come later?
Always wanted to be a lawyer. Always. I think it was, and I tell this story. I was a unique little, weird little 5-year-old, and I always wanted to be Captain America. Watching cartoons, and I don't think any neighbor's trash can was safe because that's when they had the lids on top of them. So I was Captain America, throwing my mighty shield and stuff like that. But but sooner or later, when I was a youngster, we had a mock trial or hearing, and again, I guess I just I always found to an attorney that's writing injustice just like a superhero. So I think that, no matter what we do, hopefully that we're writing injustice, whether it's an attorney, a doctor, or whatever it may be that, your chosen profession is. As I tell my real estate agents, the same thing when you're writing a contract. Write a contract, be a superhero. Be a superhero to your client to take care of them. So I always wanted to be that. So I went into political science immediately. And when I went into political science, again, I bumped into, some wonderful professors immediately that challenged me and made me think. And, and they always, and it was just great on a intellectual standpoint and they also, encouraged me, some of them gave me great ideas of where to go to law school, which is really cool. So,
and where'd you end up going to law school?
Cumberland School of Law, which
I remember that.
Which actually came out of Lebanon, Tennessee, which was the oldest law school in the South. And Lebanon actually, when Cumberland, which is in the Cumberland Plateau, of course, so they sold it in the year I was born, and all of the professors from Cumberland came to the University of Memphis Law School. So it's kind of a wild tie as to how Cumberland, its history that still is, I guess, somewhat, I feel an affinity of that. It's a natural that's been in its present existence for the same year I was born. So
the library, an effort to move it to Memphis, which failed, but I think it all worked out for everybody.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, one of my professors at school had suggested Cumberland, and my wife and I had just gotten married, or we're getting ready to get married, and we made a visit, and I just fell in love with it. It was, you drove up on the campus, and it was just perfect. So it was us. Lovely.
Yeah, I've been on that campus once. I went up there for a moot court competition back in when I was in law school, and I thought it was one of the coolest buildings I'd ever been in. Lots of heavy wainscoting and chair rails, and it just had an old world look to it.
Yeah, it was just amazing. The lights and everything was just so beautiful. And the campus was, again, it opened me, it was just such a natural fit. Back in those days, that was the beginning of the Federalist Society. It just had started its birth, and I had been introduced to them, and it was just intellectually to listen to different sides talking about the law. Law was so exciting and so much fun when you were, in law school, other than being poor, and not having anything, but the conversations and the intellect of basically going and having coffee with your friends, and that, them having a different aspect of the law, and yourself having a different aspect of the law, but being able to have a cup of coffee and really have great dialogue was just the most thrilling and fun thing in the world, to just sit and discuss legal issues in a very civil, manner, that it was so cool. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I remember a few of my classes, but I remember many of those conversations I would have in the lounge between classes. And I think most lawyers, if you talk to them long enough, will say something like that one of the best parts of their legal education was learning how to debate civilly with other lawyers over different issues.
Right. Because we're all debating over those issues anyway. And so being a gentleman, or being, you don't have to basically, you can respect your peers and be able to have but have a completely different viewpoint.
Yeah.
And I learned that early on because even though you were sitting there having that discussion in law school, but when you got out of law school, you really didn't know, and you thought that you were supposed to really get into these Perry Mason big fights. And I was lucky enough to have some deans that taught me, how to really practice law and to have respect and not be a little pain in the ass.
Yeah, I think as I get older, particularly, I really do feel the responsibility to mentor folks coming up, like people did for me. I think back on when I was a young lawyer, all of the advice I got, and people taking time to explain not just what the law was, but how the law worked and how the profession worked.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that don't get that. They don't get that kind of assistance for whatever reason.
No, it was amazing just to be lucky enough to have someone like, listening to David K. Wood, practice law and never give up his client's position, but having a really, but also, being a true gentleman of the law, and respect for all of his for all the parties in there and the adversaries of, it was, you always paid, great respect, and, as a gentleman and as an attorney. So it was, and there were many other attorneys like that too. So yes, you're right. Passing it on. That's what I try to do too, is try to give somewhat of what they gave me.
Yeah, I don't know of anything more painful than to be a first or third year lawyer.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure it out. Nothing you do is right. You've got to learn everything from where the courthouse is to how to draft a complaint. And so I always try to be as sensitive as I can to particularly the folks that find themselves in that position.
I agree. I was a lost lamb, because in law school we're learning theory, we're learning these type of things. We're not really learning how to practically do things. So and I think that there's been a new school of thought that I see that a lot of people are trying to give some of these law students that opportunity, which I think is a wise thing to do. I really do, give them a little bit more practical experience of watching it. And if you can give your clerks a little bit, some responsibility other than just making them runners, but giving them something that's not, giving away anything to your client, but helping you teach them, and using them to the best of their ability, is a marvelous thing, I think. So.
I agree. Well, let me switch gears a little bit on you. As I said in the intro, you operate a title company. You do real estate law. What about that attracted you? And how did you go from working for a guy like David Kaywood, who I guess at that time was still kind of was he all family law all the time, or did he have kind of a general practice?
No, he was definitely a domestic guy, and of course but David was such an accomplished attorney and litigator that he would take on other things also, to basically go into court, because he was a marvelous trial attorney. So he had the ability to do anything, but he was very, very good at being a domestic attorney. And I quickly realized that I was more of a lover than a hater, so to speak. It's very difficult. My disposition has always been one of not being going to court and that type of situation. I think that I enjoy the personal aspects of getting the deal done, versus always kind of being in turmoil of a divorce was very, very tough. And I think Monsignor Clunan of St. Louis Church put it best. He says, "Hey, McEvoy, you're a Catholic boy. You don't need to be doing no divorces." So real estate was where I always wanted to be from the very beginning. I had a lot of friends that were in the business, and it just seemed like you're either making a dream come true, or you're getting someone out of an issue. It's normally a very, very pleasant experience, and you get to meet so many different people. Of course, they may be upset that the Formica is not matched, or there's a issue that you have to resolve. It's still a very stressful situation. But it's really about the fact that when I was in labor law, that Fletcher Hudson at the time was one of my mentors also. He said, "There's nothing worse than chasing after a man's business." At the point, that would be his line, as to, nothing makes your blood boil more than chasing your livelihood. And then, of course, Kaywood would say, "There's nothing more than chasing your family and your business." And, so it was always, something going on. So it was there. You tend to always get people at their worst too. And I think that I enjoyed and was better suited to taking care of people's problems in that regard, and probably being able to disassociate, because if I got too vested in trying to take care of people, I'd be hurt too much by them, either by the system or by the sheer facts or not being able to help them the way I wanted to help them that way. So you get emotionally, and you don't ever want to be emotionally involved. You want to basically make clean decisions as an attorney to be the best you possibly can. I think
Well,
that's the way.
I've frequently said that you are the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company of real estate lawyers in Memphis, because after '08 and the financial reversals in '08, a lot of people got out of your business. There were a lot of people who were doing what you were doing in '07 who aren't doing it now because of, unfortunately, everything that happened. But you managed to survive it. What do you attribute your survivability, if that's a word, all these years in the business, in a business that can be very volatile?
Two things. I always knew it had to do with my location. At times I need to centralize my location so that it was easy for my clients to get to, or for the real estate agents and the banks to get to. If you're not near an outlet of easy access, I was over on Germantown Parkway and Humphreys Boulevard. More accidents happened on that intersection, I was told, in the state. I think that it could be very stressful in trying to get to. It was a very difficult thing to get to that location. So nothing was easy. So I knew that I had to make a move to a different locale. So I went to 240 and Poplar. What easier, best, people may say Midtown. Well, that's really Midtown. I mean, in actuality, that is the middle of the county and everything else. And that's where you can get to easily. So, and the location I moved to was right on a quiet little street. And so, it's always about, people having a soothing, spot to go to. Because again, it is a stressful situation buying a house, or it's a stressful situation buying a business, or whatever it may be. And so you can get them into that position. Now, the second thing that I did that I found to be is just as important, is I didn't get rid of my wonderful employees. Everyone started letting go of their people. I never got rid of my people because I thought now was the time to give the best business you could possibly give to your clients. They needed that because every deal beforehand, we were ticket takers in that time period. And people, at least agents were ticket takers, or whoever it may be, the lenders, everybody was just basically so busy. But my position was, now everything kind of became so important in their livelihood. That one deal you were doing could be 1/4 of their income that month, could be a half of their income that month. So you really need to pay attention to giving, great quality and not trying to cut your expenses. Now, it cost me, but it paid off over the long haul of basically not in keeping my people and my staff intact and not, immediately, running away from the situation or trying to cut expenses. Sometimes, immediately people want to cut expenses and do those things, but that's not always necessarily the best answer, because you really got to figure out what your clients are needing. And I figured that that's what they needed was convenience and experience and being able to make sure that we're providing them with the best service that they could give and the best counsel.
Yeah, I think when the time we were together, the one thing I always noticed about your operation is that you paid equal attention to the real estate agents who oftentimes were referring you business, but also to the parties that would come in and close the deal by going above and beyond. I think that spurs a lot of referral business, because at the end of the day, you're right. Dealing with a lawyer, even a lawyer that's supposedly on your side, for a lot of people is a very stressful situation, and y'all do a great job of welcoming people in and explaining what's going on. And when people walk out, and as you know, many of my relatives have closed their house with you, and they all say, I really felt like I understood what was going on. I wasn't just rushed through the paperwork.
They are the clients. The agents are nice. The banks are clients too. I mean, because we're representing them also. We're handling their legal work. So all of those people are really the true folks that, and they need, and they deserve more than anything. They're the ones that are spending the money. They're the ones that are buying these homes, these things that they're going to put their families in, that they're going to, invest their livelihoods into. So yes, they are truly the ones that need to, to give them the best that they deserve. And quite frankly, we still are always an extension. Even though if an agent brought the deal to us, we're still kind of making them look good also. So in a sense of, if I always remember that the client comes first, I'll be well off in the end, always. Because if you're thinking about yourself first, or that, it's just, that's not being a true attorney and doing those type of things. Client first, you're second, and then it'll all work out. So that's the way it goes.
Well, you're in a unique position to answer this question. What do you think? What's the state of the real estate business these days, given all that's going on?
March was a very interesting time. It was very spooky. I mean, everyone was very, very nervous. But there's a group of folks we talked to, and it was very nerve-wracking. It's still nerve-wracking. It's very nerve-wracking, basically, because of of COVID and its effects. It had a great deal of, especially if you're thinking about the industry itself. You had, if you're take for instance New York or Chicago or Florida, a lot of travel, a lot of entertainment, a lot of people, people coming in. A lot of deals dropped off very, very quickly, and a lot of people, and a lot of sellers taking houses off markets because of fear of what was going to happen, and was I going to keep my job? Am I going to be able to keep my job? Still becomes an issue of, it's one of the big things. The industry, we all started talking nationally, with the groups we're in, which I play a heavy role with, the American Land Title Association. I love that place, and I love the Mortgage Bankers Association and the Tennessee Bankers Association. And those, being able to utilize those groups and be part of them, and to kind of see what was going on, you were able to kind of plan a little bit better, at least, and start to see what might be happening, and also try to see some of the pitfalls that may be happening. So the real, the fact, the first thing we were worried about was where the courthouses were going to close. If the courthouses were closed, we couldn't record documents. You couldn't get protection. We were looking for gap coverage. And then, you're wondering about how we were going to deal with how we were going to close people. Well, we started doing, of course, I've been doing digital closings now for over a year, and was the first, to do so. And we want to continue that route. But, there are a lot of challenges that are still yet to be found about making sure that the bank, to give the banks security, especially the secondary market, to make sure that they feel secure in what's going to be happening in their world. And making sure that their systems are set up so that you'll have a digital note versus a physical note that may be in your vault versus your digital vault. So there's a lot of different, and mixing those things together. So there was just so many moving targets going on at that time, and still to this day, because you're separating so many people. You're trying to protect the consumer. You're trying to protect everyone in the your consumer and your employees. How are you separating them? Right now, everyone, of course, beforehand, anything, we're essential services. And the first thing we need to be concerned about was protecting my people. And I had, half staff, and still to this day have half staff out at their home, because if they are, in that category of perhaps something that may be susceptible, and I want to protect them. So I want them at home so that they're protecting their family. And that's quite stressful on the business. And it's quite stressful with growth and trying to so you're having to double your work and your time of spending for making sure that you're providing those things. So it's a very, very, and it can be quite taxing to continually keep doing that process since March to today, doing closing outside with people.
Right. What do you think the future holds for the real estate business?
I think there's, a lot, I'm looking at I'm always watching the sales, how those are going. Sales seem to be, again, it's about whether people are going to put their money in. People were frightened of retail before the COVID. So I'm sure retail is definitely having a little bit of an effect right now, even more so, of commercial retail that is. So I think people are, they're adapting as to what type of an environment now they're putting in for their office space. Of course, we've got everyone in their little cubicles. Now we've had, plexiglass put into the closing rooms and into around surrounding every one of our employees. So I think that we still will never really get away from the fear factor of COVID and how business is conducted. I think this is going to hopefully escalate the digital process. Right, like I said, right now we try to do a great many of our closings, seller sides digitally, so that we're getting the warranty deeds done. We have people that are all over the country and all over the world that need to have things. There were people that may be a soldier that needs to get something done, and those are things that COVID has hopefully escalated. These type of things, or is getting them moving, or at least getting people more so to the table to talk about it. I think that a lot of people also watching how to see how a lot of people, some people get a little bit too nervous about things but you got to sit through it as to making sure a deed that's going to be signed a different way, is that going to be something that's going to be secure and going to withstand some of the governor's orders and type things? Is it going to be the best way to prevent fraud in the future? So those are questions that a lot of good folks are talking about and thinking about today. And so I think that people still love dealing with coming in to have the ceremony and being able to feel comfortable about discussing it. But it's amazing what we're doing today. We can have these same things done just like we're doing today and have a closing and have it done very, very nicely.
It's going to be interesting 5 years from now. What remains and what is different. And by that, I mean this, if you're 20 years old right now, you probably, well, I know you have no memory. You've never met someone at the gate in an airport.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, if you're picking somebody up at the airport, you would park your car, you would go into the airport, and you would go to the gate, and you'd be standing there as they deplaned.
Yeah.
Well, if you're 20 years or younger, maybe 25 years or younger, you've got no memory of doing that because of 9/11.
Right.
And so I wonder what of our lives is just going to go away because of what you're talking about, because the technology and the practice, we just get away from it. And what do we retain? And
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I went from typewriter to fax machine to, to computer to, to now, as to printing it off there, to having packages delivered by FedEx or whatever it may be. So all of these things, just in the years that I've been doing this, carbon paper, carbon on the typewriter, making your copies. So
at the risk of being that old guy, I'll say that I can remember when I first started practicing law, literally, if you got a fax, and they called them telexes then.
Right.
If you got a fax, the office manager at Armstrong Allen, where I started, would literally bring it to you on a silver tray. The telex would be on a silver tray, and she would bring it to you, and you take it off the tray and read it or whatever. And that's just how rare those things were. Now, a lot of kids don't really know what a fax machine is, although in the law we still use those a lot. At least some lawyers do.
Well, yeah, for security purposes, fax machine can be a lot safer for basically not being hacked.
Yep. Yep. Well, Jeff, I think we've about run out of time. I really appreciate, I could go on talking to you for hours, but I really appreciate your time, and it's been very interesting, and particularly your thoughts on the real estate business, past, present, and future. I think it'd be of interest to a lot of people.
Yeah, one other thing, I don't think that you still need the no matter how much technology, you still need the people, and you still need the real estate agents. You still need, no one's jobs go away just because technology comes on. You still need to have that personal contact with people.
I think a year ago, it's interesting you say that, because I think a year ago there was this thought that, eventually we would kind of evolve into a teleworking society, and that, we would get more remote and whatnot. And I think what the last few months at least has taught me is how much I value that personal contact, sitting across the table from one another rather than on a Zoom call.
Right.
It's just not the same. And I think, I think rather than destroying the commercial office market, I think this is going to change it. But I don't think people are going to get rid of their common spaces. They may use their offices differently. They may use less real estate. But I think we've kind of reaffirmed our commitment to, or our desire for that common space to come together and collaborate as human beings.
No doubt about it. I think that you lose something when you don't have that. You may become jaded, or just don't have that good feeling about, folks. I think it's like the telephone. They always say, or even dealing with the emails, or social media. They say you'll be meaner on social media than you would ever be by just talking to someone, face to face. So don't ever want to lose that.
You remember there was a television commercial, either the 70s or 80s. It was a commercial for United Airways. And it was an older guy, and he walks into this conference room of what turns out to be salespeople. And he says, look, we just got fired by our oldest customer because he said he didn't know us anymore. We deal with phone calls and faxes, and he says, I never see you. I don't know who you are. And so he hands everybody a list of customers and airline tickets, and said, we're going to go see our customers. And they said, Bob, what are you going to do? And he says, I'm going to go see that customer, that old friend who fired us. And that's the commercial.
I do remember that commercial. Love it.
And I think it's even more true now, that the more we do electronically and virtually and all of that, the more that we realize that we need each other on a personal level more and more. At least I hope that's what people take away from it. If we could marry those two things together so that technology helps us be more human rather than dehumanize us, then maybe there's hope for society.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that would be the goal of those things. Utilize your tools to make you better at what you do, but don't take away the beautiful things that we have.
Yeah. Well, amen to that. Again, I appreciate it. This has been Jeff McEvoy, owner of Home Surety Title. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody watching. Jeff, take it easy and tell Emily I said hey.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all very much.